Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners. Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
Okay, John, you're muted.
All right, hold on.
I'm sure it sounded good.
How about now, boys?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. Welcome back. It's Word Balloon, the Comic Book Conversation Show. John Suntress here. Some slight technical difficulties on my end. You'll forgive me, everybody. It might compromise my ability to show panels from the Gilthorpe comic strip, which is the subject of today's discussion. And I'm so happy to have two good friends to talk about it. First of all, my good friend from sports radio for many years here in Chicago at The Score, and of course also ESPN 1000, Mike Murphy. Murph, great to see you.
Hey, John, great to literally see you and be with you. Thank you.
It's my pleasure, man, and really excited to have an old Word Balloon friend back on the air as well, and that's Henry Barajas, the new writer for the Gilthorpe comic strip. Welcome back, Henry.
Thank you, John, for having me. If anyone knew who Gilthorpe was, it was you.
Well, and honestly, man, I adored Gilthorpe growing up, and I know Mike did as well. And back in our sports radio days, Mike is such an ardent fan of the Gilthorpe strip that I know he had, at the very least, Murph, I don't know if you ever had Jack Burrell on, but I know you had the guy on who was collecting the old strips. And they were putting out graphic novels, containing the stories. So tell me about your association with Gil.
Well, on the radio show, which you were a big part of behind the scenes for many years, I would often talk about the Gilthorpe comic strip, and the writer, I guess, did he create it? He wrote it, and he did the artwork. Mr. Barrel, Jack, is it Burrell? Barrel? I never really can remember. Berrill. Jack.
Yeah, do you know a pronunciation, Henry, or no?
No, I've always heard him referred to as Jack. So Neil Rubin, the previous writer, it was very important for me to talk to him and Rod Wiggum, who's drawing the strip currently.
Sure. Well, Jack, I always figured it was Burrell, but Jack not only, so I often talked about the strip, and then I got a call one day, probably off the air, or maybe on the air, who knows, we were pretty free and easy going, John, on the air.
Yes.
But the local, I guess, Chicago, now this is around maybe 1995, he had a Gilthorpe fan club. I believe it was national, but even if it was just local, but he was the guy behind it. And he would call me sometimes on the air, and we'd talk about that day's strip on occasion. And then out of the blue, it turns out that they were flying Jack into Chicago for a one-night big ceremony at a local sports bar on the north side of Chicago, and we promoted it on our radio station. I was there, sort of loosely the master of ceremonies, and I was just looking through, and I can't find, I had a Gilthorpe coffee mug, which was my gift that night for helping out. But I did meet Jack. I probably had him on the phone, like you said, John, a few times also interviewing. But I recall him as the most quiet, wonderful, soft-spoken, almost shy, introverted man, and he was blown away. We had over 100 people, which, anytime you try to do a radio promotion, 100 could be pretty good for sort of a spur-of-the-moment type thing.
Totally.
And he couldn't believe it. I mean, I don't want to speak for him, but I could tell it was like one of the highlights of his life, because like in radio, we sit in a little room and do our radio thing, and as Henry knows, you sit at your table or whatever, and you don't get a lot of one-on-one feedback. And I believe that Jack had never been anywhere where there were 100 Gilthorpe diehards in one room, patting him on the back, asking him questions, and I'll never forget it. And I'm sure, not to speak for him, it was a big highlight for him.
I believe it, man, and I've been refreshing my memory on the Thorp strip, and of course, Gil was the high school coach at Milford High School. He coached all the sports, and as Will McCool says, my co-producer on the Murph Show, go Mudlarks! Absolutely,
yes. Very good.
The Milford
I had to let the record show. I had to look that up. Way to go, Will.
But so Henry, this is great, man. Are you only the third writer on Gilthorpe?
I'm the fourth.
Fourth, wow.
Yeah, in 64 years of the strip going, I think it's pretty incredible. It's one of those things where, like, Alex Segura hooked me up. He was like, hey, you should talk to Henry about writing this strip, because, I worked in a newsroom. I love sports. As I think, John, you can confirm that we always end up talking about boxing if I'm on the show, because I'm a big boxing guy, and it's a real dream come true. I never thought this would ever be possible, because normally comics are written and drawn by one person.
Very true.
So
are you so yeah, I mean, look, it started in 1958, and this is back in the time, Murph, as and truly, I'm right behind you. This
there it is, the Bible. Henry's holding up the Bible. I had that book.
That's great. Oh, Henry, I'm so glad, because truly I'm having trouble with graphics on my end. I'm
sure.
One of my comic book fists in my intro. So even though I can see you guys below the screen, I can't see you on the screen. But thank you for doing that. It's a great strip. And I mean, the great thing is, this is back in the era when there were few entertainment options for kids, but also Thorp was hugely popular with adults, as most comic strips were back in the day. It was for everybody, and it was a great teen high school soap opera comic strip that focused on athletics, but also would talk about the personal dramas of the kids, and of course Gil himself.
Well, the thing I recall most is that it ran every day in our local, the Chicago Tribune, but not in the comics section, right in the sports section, up at the top usually, or right at the bottom, usually page 2, if I recall, or page 3, not, way back by the box scores, right there. And what you were just saying, John, and I think Henry is well aware of this, is like, so who is the demographic? Who is the target market? I read Gilthorpe probably every day from age 10, around 1960, till age 50, around the year 2000. So is there a demographic, a target market? I read it from age 10 to age 50. Now, that's not bad if you can capture a 40-year age group. Henry, is that what your publishers and your people say we're going to hit everyone from age 10 to age 50, and maybe Murphy, who's looking back at 50 in the rearview mirror.
Well, I'm one of the lucky millennials that got to grow up with a newspaper. So like one of my favorite things to do was to like just get it in the morning, read it, take it to school, read it at school, read it with my grandmother. And that, like, I used to live across the street from the Arizona Daily Star, where I wanted to work my whole life. And so like having a newspaper in my life was always a thing. So I feel like, I hope maybe there's some kids out there that still are able to get the paper, or that still, have these kind of, like things available to them. But yeah, I'm hoping, I got to write a comic for Marvel. I got to write a story for DC Comics. I do have my own audience. So I'm hoping to bring everybody in and tell a story that everyone can appreciate, because Gilthorpe feels like the last person of his era. And that we all know a guy like that. We all know a guy that like has this like rustic feel to them that we all gravitate towards too, because he has a lot of good advice, a lot of life experience. He's a war veteran. He flies planes. He's been at rock bottom, and he's been at the top, the tippy top. So I want to like give everyone that experience. I feel like it's like a Mad Men meets Hardball kind of story where, you can put this guy in 2022, and no matter what, he's going to do the right thing.
Cool.
That makes sense. He's the Rock. Absolutely, man. Well, and also for people, I don't even know city to city what's left in the paper, but the good news is the Tribune Comic Syndicate has gocomics.com, so you can read. And I always encourage people who love and miss comic strips and maybe miss them from the physical paper. Maybe they're not buying the paper anymore. You can subscribe and even create your own virtual comic strip page and choose things. And Gilthorpe is among the selections from Go Comics. And yes. Henry's strip debuted today, Murph. It's
I know. I can't believe it. Congratulations.
Thank you, Murph.
Very
Thank
cool.
you so much.
It's so yeah. Tell us about the story that we're going to get right now, Henry.
So I read a lot of the stuff that Neil's done, and I went back 20 years ago and read the writer after Jack,
Jerry Jenks, I believe.
Yes, and so I wanted to do some. What my goal is to bring his kids back. His kids have been absent for the last 20 years or so, and as John knows, comics is a beautiful thing where you can just bring people back and not have to explain it. So I'm not gonna explain why his kids are in the picture again. But I talked to a lot of actual sports current coaches before I started writing it. And a lot of them say, you're married to your coaching life and you're married to your wife. And like a lot of the times coaching comes first. So that's kind of the loose explanation as to why his family is kind of the forefront. And as you see in the first strip, he gets Coach of the Year. So the goal is to reprint all of these after a year from now. And the first trade paperback I'm writing this as a comic book. So the first trade paperback is called Coach of the Year, where we see him get the Coach of the Year award, and he excels at work, but his home life is kind of imbalanced. And that's what I really want to bring into attention. Soon we're going to meet a new coach at Valley Tech that kind of has it out for Gil and wants to be Milford's number one coach, and I really want to keep current fans happy, but I'm really excited to introduce Gilthorpe to a whole new group of people that probably never heard of the strip, or a lot of the times Gil's in the sports section, so a lot of people don't either make it to the sports section or they have no interest in sports. So good news, the old paper that I grew up reading and I worked for, Arizona Daily Star, has added it to their sports section.
Great.
So yeah, it's really cool to be in my hometown newspaper.
I was reading an old Chicago Reader article from 2003 talking about when the Chicago Tribune dropped Gil.
Yeah.
And it's surprising. And again, because this was, the home paper, although Jack was from Connecticut, as I understand it. And, that's interesting because there are a ton of, certainly back in the day, Connecticut really was a hotbed for a lot of the classic comic strip and even comic book artists. But the guys like Dick Brown behind Hagar the Horrible and, Beetle Bailey and all these guys, and the great John Cullen Murphy, pardon me, one of the great adventure comic strip guys. They all lived in the same county and they all were neighbors and just kind of doing their thing. It was fun.
Cool.
So,
cool.
And also, God, I'll tell you, Henry, as you know, you're bringing your fans to Gilthorpe, but really there is this very fervent, still passionate Gilthorpe fan base, and it's great. Murph, do you remember the name of the like soda shop that they all hung out at?
Well, of course, the Bucket.
and apparently, I guess the online community for Gilthorpe, they're the Bucketeers.
Oh, so nice.
And I don't even know. And Henry, truly, because again, I absolutely know that comic strips, just like newspapers themselves, are finding themselves, as far as the physical paper, it's kind of a not, if not dying tradition, it's ebbing away slowly. Do you know internationally? Is there an audience? Are there papers that carry Gil, or is it strictly an American product?
I don't know about international. So Tribune Content Agency owns Gilthorpe. So I know about the domestic side. I'd love to get what my goal is. So he turns 65 next year. So my goal is to reprint Gilthorpe, my book, as a comic with the original first couple first year maybe, or the best of, whenever you see a Superman Action Comics #1 kind of thing. So I would love to expand that market. That'd be so much fun. But just for the I know John likes technical stuff, but the way I'm writing Gilthorpe is 1 week is a page, every week is a 9-panel grid, so you get a page of a comic, and then the next week is the next page, the next week's the next page. But the way I have to write is interesting too, because you only have so much space. So characters can really only say one thing per panel because of spacing. So it's been a reinvigorating kind of exercise for me to have a constant schedule, to think about the medium in a different way. But by the end of the year, my goal is to have him return to Coach of the Year and kind of start all over. And that's kind of my anchor for it to work towards. And a lot of the readers, they're very vocal on the comment section. And I'm someone who has been I'm the millennial that grew up in the AOL chat rooms, MySpace, Facebook. I've been bullied on the internet my whole life. So anything these people have to say is nothing that I haven't heard before or that my own family has told me. So I am excited to see how happy and angry they get over what I have planned, because my pitch was let's bring Gilthorpe in 2022, in schools, that are things that are happening right now, and things that the teachers and students and families are facing at the moment. So it's going to get controversial. If I'm not on Tucker Carlson by the end of the year, I will gladly step down, because I'm not doing the Lord's work.
If I could, John, ask a question. So Henry, excuse my naivete, but you are the writer and the artist.
No, I'm just a writer. Rod Wiggum is still drawing.
I'm sorry.
He's been drawing since 2008.
Yes.
Okay. Because the next time you talk to him, I have a question. Is it tougher to draw the flat top with the sideburns, as they used to call them, or the square jaw? Because on my radio show, and John Will McCool will remember, I always realized I might be talking to a few people that don't know who the hell I'm talking about Gilthorpe on our radio. So I'd always identify him as the flat top, square jaw high school coach. And you never can forget the flat top and the square jaw. And John, the picture I always have and Henry, of Gil, we all remember either watching it first run, Andy and Mayberry, or later on in syndication. But do you guys remember, of course, do you remember Floyd the Barber? Remember his barber shop?
Yeah.
So back on the wall behind Floyd the Barber, and it was in my barber shop in Chicago there was a picture of like about 7 or 9 different hairstyles, like you could say to the barber. One guy looked like, Roger Maris, the real crew cut. We can all picture the base. But there was one behind him that was Gilthorpe. It was a thick flat top, not the buzz, and it said with fenders, which I guess was what they called it. So next time you can please ask your artist, which is tougher to draw, the fenders or the square jaw.
I will. I have a great relationship at the moment with Rod until I'm sure he's going to be like, what are you making me do here?
Good one.
No, this is a truly, like you said, Henry, it is limited real estate every day to do. Is it 4 panels or 3 panels?
It's only 3 panels.
There you go. My God. I mean, that's like you said, nine panel grid for a full comic book page, so that doesn't give you a lot of space. And that's interesting, Henry, because I do know, speaking to other comic strip writers and also hearing interviews with comic strip writers of the past, like Milton Caniff, Steve Canyon, Terry and the Pirates, they would talk about how, especially for the daily newspaper, that a story arc might only last like 3 weeks, something like that, maybe 4 weeks or whatever. So are there mini arcs within this year-long plan that you've got for this massive arc?
So a lot of the fans like the seasons. They keep asking, is it summertime? Is it spring? Is it fall? So I'm like, so it's definitely going to be a seasonal thing, but it's like a general hospital. Like I'm looking at this like general hospital where it's like every day it's a day and it's a thing that's happening. And the cool thing about it is the way it has been done is the sports. So I'm going to go into, softball, volleyball, baseball, football, I want to do rugby. I want to do all these sports. And I have some friends around in LA that are going to hook me up with some of the coaches. So I'm going to go to practices and games and like just steal what I hear. I'm really excited to like glean from, what's happening around me and get a sense of the community. And I used to be a newspaper guy and write about my community. So it's very important for me to have that like finger on the pulse.
I get it, man. No, prep sports are so important from a local standpoint. And as Murph knows, because Murph covered it quite well on his radio show, Chicago high school baseball and all the sports was definitely a great topic. And certainly the community got into it. Are you introducing, and I don't even know from an existing standpoint, does Gil coach the women's teams, or is there a women's?
I've seen his, the previous writer told me his wife coaches some of the teams.
Funny.
Yeah. So I my other thing that I wanted to do with Gilthorpe was make him the central character, because a lot of the times, the longer you write this, the more interesting everyone else gets around him, and that happens with like Batman. Like we all love the Joker, we all love these characters that support Batman, and a lot of the times Batman isn't the like main character. And that was kind of the note I got when I wrote my Batman story that's coming out in August. August 9th. So if you're watching this and like Batman, go get Batman Urban Legends number 18, because it's an Etrigan Batman story that I'm really excited about.
Oh, that's great, man. Batman Entertainment. That's wonderful. Very cool.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Now I've lost track of Gil. Now I found him again, thanks to you, Henry.
Yeah.
But I lost track of Gil. Did you say that he was married?
For now.
Uh-oh. Okay. Uh-oh. Well, I didn't know he was even married, so this is all news to me.
His wife, Mimi.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Yes, that was near the end of the Tribune printing it in around 2000 or so. Yes, Mimi, thank you. Yes, okay, it's coming back.
Yeah.
So, that is so great, man. Well, and I am I allowed to say, Henry, Murph's suggestion for a character?
I mean, yeah, like he has some marital issues right now. And
Okay. Okay.
so his wife Mimi feels like she's taking a second, she's playing second fiddle when coaching is his life. And that's kind of like, kind of where she is. And she's also a professional golfer. So I want to make her be a pro golfer again, So
cool.
Yeah, it's an exciting time for me to just, blow it up. And that's like I remember Bendis was on John's show and he was like, I can't have Daredevil eat pie, and he I have to do the worst things possible to him, because if that doesn't happen, it's not worth reading.
Oh no, there definitely needs to be drama, that conflict, story comes from conflict. Absolutely, man. So yeah, things shouldn't be going well for Gil. He's our hero, but he's got to, rise above adversity. So no, again, that's classic comic strips. That's just classic storytelling, man. So that's going to be cool to explore. Murph, were there other characters in the strip that were favorites of yours? I'm so glad you remember Mimi.
Well, sure. By the way, as a little aside, I didn't know that we were going to get some Beetle Bailey high fives from you a few minutes ago. Not every day. I was going to say Mort Walker. Thank you.
No, is it Mort Walker or Mort? Either Mort Walker or Mort.
No, Walker. You're right.
It is Walker. Yes,
Mort Walker. But one of my favorite characters from Jack's creative mind, the creator of Gilthorpe. By the way, Gil named after Gil Hodges, the great Dodger first baseman, and Thorp after the great Jim Thorpe, America's greatest athlete, some will still say.
Yes.
But I believe the initial run of arc, as you guys call it, excuse me, I believe the initial arc, and I might have read this live, if that's the way to phrase when you're 7 years old, but certainly in the best of book that Henry just held up, I believe it's also in there. The first storyline, that's it, was Zippy was his name, and Zippy made the Milford High, the Mudlarks baseball team, but he was the last guy on the end of the bench. But he was a chatter, holler, come on, guys, let's go. But he never got in a game. So, of course, Milford starts losing. There it is, and losing. And pretty soon, the season's half over, and they're in last place. And I wish I could recall how creator Jack shoehorned Zippy into the game. Maybe someone got hurt. Who knows, right? But Zippy's out there. He's got these spark plug, the rah-rah, and they still can't field, not much of a player, but they start winning. And the dead-ass team, all of a sudden now, is alive. And the team starts winning in their own, and all of a sudden now, the championship, the state tournament or whatever, and Zip makes, of course, a heads-up, crazy, I can't remember what it was, but some Javi Baez off the wall, smart play, and they win the game. And of course, Zip is carried off the field on everyone's shoulders. And I want to remember this was before Hoosiers and before Rudy. So this guy, Jack, he was ahead of everybody.
He was. It looks like Zip got the pitcher hit him with the ball.
You leaned into it, let's say, right?
Yeah.
With the bases loaded.
Yeah, he went.
That's fantastic, man.
I'm also going to bring back the custodian, Wiggins, who's also known as Pop.
Pop! Yes! Do it!
But, I want to introduce him in an interesting way that only you can do in comics.
Good.
Exciting. Very cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, and also, Henry, I'm so glad that you aren't afraid of controversy, because certainly we are seeing that in high school sports right now. We've got kids of different orientations, and certainly we have trans people that are of teen age and high school age, And I think there's a lot of really good story content to, explore, and I think really put a modern spin in ways that Jack probably wasn't thinking about back in the day. And again, I think also even the basic idea of, hey, our best pitcher is a woman. Why can't we put her on the A team and have her play with the guys? Stuff like that. I would imagine, without spoiling, that might be some of the areas.
Oh yeah, definitely. I grew up with a trans aunt. I have a lot of trans folks in my life, a lot of non-binary friends, and that's just kind of the world we live in. And it's hard to shield Gil from that. And I would like to, I want to put him in these difficult situations where the town probably isn't as progressive, but they are obsessed with winning. So when if these teams win, or if there's like these kinds of moments, we're seeing a lot of just LGBTQIA just banning and censorship in schools right now. So that it's hard to not think about those things with kids, Sure. And if I do want to reach kids or a younger generation, I have to talk about what they're going through, and that's of what's happening.
That's cool, Henry, honestly, and I think that's great. And again, I think it makes for relevant, interesting stories that I think people would want to read. So that's terrific.
Excuse me, John. Henry, you've probably thought of all this, but I look back to my high school gym coach, and they all had to teach during the day. Like the math teacher might be the high school baseball coach. And a lot of them had part-time jobs. Many of them I went to a very large high school in the LaGrange area, suburb of Chicago, and they were all the bus drivers in the morning, and then some of them in the evening. Or I knew one that we weren't supposed to talk about him. He was a bartender at night. Oh no, a bartender at night. Have you ever thought about, you could always expand Gil into being a teacher, or even some weird, wacky part-time job, or mundane like being the bus driver.
Oh yeah. I loved, I'm from Tucson, Arizona. I'd love going somewhere and seeing a teacher bus tables, in places, be like, oh my God, I didn't know you exist outside the classroom.
Right.
I did talk to some coaches, and they said if you're like Gilthorpe, you're getting paid enough to not have to do that.
Yeah.
So his assistants and the people, his support system, will have those kind of A and B plots, but Gil is dedicated to the school, and it's really fun to really hone in on this character and really try to do interesting things and try to do stuff that hasn't been done before in 64 years. It's like The Simpsons. They've already touched a lot of these subjects, but to do it in a way that I see interesting is going to be a lot of fun.
Nice.
Was Gil as you say, he had a military background. Was he a former athlete? Right now, Murph, I'm blanking. Yeah. Pete Burnside. Thank God I remembered his name. We had a coach at Newport High School who was a former baseball player. He played for the Giants, and I believe he played for the Senators. And was just a guy. He wasn't a standout all-star or anything like that. But I don't know if you ever had him on the show, Murph. Pete Burnside.
No, I didn't know of your connection. He was a pitcher, and like you say, 2 or 3 teams, mid-50s, early 60s.
Yeah.
And nowadays he'd probably be a rotation starter at about $10 million a year. But I remember Pete Burnside very well. You get his baseball card. How can you forget him, right?
Absolutely, man. I know you've got all your cards still, so that's great. Yeah.
That makes you a real person. You really played if you had the baseball card.
100%, absolutely. And truly a soft-spoken man. I don't think he would have made a great radio guest because he was so shy about talking. We really had to egg him on. And we're like, come on, coach, tell us about, playing in the show. We want to know, man. Yeah. So I don't know, Henry. Was Gil an athlete as well? Was he a pro athlete before he became a teacher and a coach?
Yeah. So shout out to Neil Rubin, the writer of 17 years of Gilthorpe. He was kind enough to do a welcome to Milford package and send me kind of the highlights of all the characters. Cool. And according to Neil, Gil was a multi-sport star athlete, and he is a private pilot who owns a single-plane engine, which I'm very excited to show in a. I've already written, I think, 23 days, and he flies eventually. But
fantastic, excellent. That's great, man. No, very, very cool. Well, that's cool, and I'm glad Neil is still around and was willing to give you the primer to kind of get all the characters and get you up to speed and everything. That's great. Are you reading I'm really glad that you've got the graphic novels as well handy. I imagine it's must have been fun, reaching back into Gil's history.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure it's giving you a ton of new ideas.
Well, this is going to be the thing that I'm going to mine from everything here. I love to, as John knows, one of the best feelings that you could do is just outsmart a comic book fan in something. And if you can pull a reference these people that are currently reading, who are apparently diehard fans are, then it just, if you can get one over on them, because they're always going to get over on you. I also got this original Gilthorpe comic that was published from eBay. All this is from eBay.
Yes.
Thankfully, it's still cheap. I need to get all this stuff before it gets popular so that I can afford it.
There you go.
Absolutely. Corner the market, Henry. Absolutely, man. Get your totems. That's wonderful. Yeah, I'm so glad you held up a Dell cover, because, again, I'm having trouble showing graphics on my side. But I did notice that Dell Comics later becoming Gold Key. And Murph, were you a comic reader?
Yeah, I was more of the Superman, Jimmy Olsen, action, adventure, Lois Lane genre.
Sure.
Yeah, because they had the 5, Superman, Superboy, Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen, and sometimes action and adventure. They all sort of merged. But what it meant was, because some came out every 4 weeks, but mostly 6 weeks or 8 weeks, you'd go to the local drugstore, and it was always where's Waldo? It was like hit or miss. Like all of a sudden, there'd be the new Jimmy Olsen. And then tomorrow, but there hadn't been anything for 4 weeks. Then Jimmy Olsen's there a few days later. It was like a treasure hunt, yes.
100%, you're right. I started buying when they were 12 cents. I know you probably started 10 cents, but
mine was 10 cents. Wow. I'm the old young man. You had to pay 12, huh?
Yeah, I know. And I remember my 50-cent allowance when they became 20 cents, and I would buy 2 comics every week and then a pack of baseball cards during baseball season.
Yeah, but then DC Comics would stick you with that 50-cent big annual one every once in a while. 50 cents? Are you kidding me? I cut 2 lawns and I made $1 only, all day long.
Yeah, my comics is I used to go down to the gas station and get, comics for $1 or $2.
Okay, there you go.
Then, and now Murph, I know Murph hasn't. I'm assuming Murph hasn't seen the price of a comic book these days. Henry and I know Murph, they're between $4 and $7, depending on how much pages for a single issue. A single issue.
I believe it.
It's crazy, man. I know, but again, the great thing is you can also get them digitally. And again, we mentioned it earlier that Gilthorpe is, if it's not in your local paper, Go Comics is the Tribune's online digital version of the comic strips, and it really is.
Hold on, I got my yellow pad. I'm Go Comics.
Go Comics.
Go Comics. Absolutely.
Cool.
GoComics.com.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yep. And also their rival King Features also offers the same thing. And just like the Tribune, King Features has the great old action adventure comic strips. But even one of my favorites, being a boxing fan, and Henry and Murph know that I'm a massive boxing fan. His name was Big Ben Bolt, and John Cullen Murphy was the writer-artist of it, and it was a 50s adventure comic about this heavyweight contender.
That's awesome,
and it was terrific. And no, I love sport comics. I mean, Murph, Henry, and I grew up on superhero comics as well.
Oh, I know.
But it is so great that in the last 20 years, the other genres. The other story genres have really come alive in comics, and now literally you can read any sort of comic, romance, sports, pirate comics, certainly a lot of crime comics alongside the superheroes. So really, it's a great time for comics, and I really appreciate that comic strips have been able to transition digitally and still have a decent audience.
Oh yeah.
You know,
I'm really excited. I'm trying to get it in more papers just because I want to single-handedly keep papers alive. If you're gonna, but yeah, like it's one of those things where it's kind of, because comic strips are coming back, and I think in part of folks like Steens, who's doing Heart of the City, and Jules Rivera on Mark Trail. You're
the classic Mark Trail, absolutely still thriving.
Sure.
Yeah, so you got I'm glad that there is a there are some folks like the people I'm working with, like Christina and Carrie and Rick and all these cool people at Tribune who see a value, and someone like myself who's like has an appreciation for comic strips and the subject matter and wants to have a good time with it.
I met Steens last fall at the Baltimore Comic-Con. She and I were both judges for the Ringo Awards.
Oh, cool.
Great person. She's terrific.
Yeah.
And it was a real pleasure meeting her, and a fun person. I haven't had her on Word Balloon yet, but that's...
you should have them on Word Balloon, definitely, because I had a great time with them at TCAF. And just one of the sharpest minds in comics, and someone who I'm very glad is still around, because they could easily transition into bigger markets and do better.
Totally. And also, Murph, really, again, independent of comic strips itself, web comics, I think, really brought a new audience to the format of comic strips, and really the last 25 years. So it's been cool. So, Henry, you mentioned that you've got a Batman story coming up in Urban Legends, which is great, next month. And you said you did a Marvel story recently. What was your Marvel story?
Well, I did that last year. That was for the COVID, for kids to get the vaccine. And that was, if a kid got the vaccine before school, they got a free comic. And it's not a technical, Marvel credit. And we talked about this last time I was on your show, but it's still fun to write Hulk Smash and Avengers Assemble and make it available for kids for free. It was featured in Times Square, the cover and everything. And the mayor and the governor and all the city mayors were promoting it. So, it's me giving back to me New York City and the characters that have shaped my moral compass.
Yeah, I forgot, Henry. You're right. They make specialty comics, Murph, where let's say the American Dental Association wants to promote hygiene or whatever, and they'll have a Spider-Man story where Spider-Man goes to the dentist and stuff, and it's interesting. It's kind of a side hustle for the publishers to get involved in and give back to the community and make these kind of comics. Hell, even our good buddy Sven Gulli, Murph, managed to get it. It wasn't for any public service thing, but Dan DiDio, the publisher of DC Comics, was such a massive Sven Gulli fan.
Really?
They made a one-shot of Sven Gulli hanging out with the Justice League. It was pretty funny.
How cool.
Absolutely, man.
Rich Kind.
Yes, Rich Coase. Absolutely, man. Great guy. Rich Kind, Chicago comedian that no, I understand. Murph, I'm doing it. I do it as well. I'm so glad I remember Pete Burnside, as Will McCool pointed out. Good old number 39.
Oh, got me on that one. Thank you, guys.
There you go, man. That's great. And I'm really excited for Henry and this thing getting started.
Yeah. Congratulations again. How wonderful.
Absolutely. Murph, what were the other comic strips that you enjoyed back in the day?
Well, I remember as a really young boy, Dick Tracy was the number one at the top of the Tribune comic section.
Oh, yeah.
And every day, I think I almost learned to read, and decipher and with Dick Tracy. And then I had an affinity for Dennis the Menace, which is, you guys call it a one panel, I believe. And if I'm not mistaken, Dennis the Menace and I were born the same month, May of June of 51. And so I always I didn't realize that we had such a connection until years later when I did a search of Wikipedia on Mr. Ketchum, I believe.
Yes, Hank Ketchum, very good.
Ketchum, who
you got it.
Who then, when you really read about him, he looks like Henry Mitchell in real life, and
yes, he did.
Hank Ketchum's wife looked like Alice, and they had a child that was a menace. So it was literally every day of their home life was the panel.
Murph, did you watch the TV show? I remember watching it, but I got to be honest, it is so painful to watch now. That's a pretty. And again, I don't know. I don't have that. John, that I did. Please.
Most sitcoms. Have you watched Hazel lately? Most sitcoms from the 50s or early 60s. No, they don't hold up well. I understand that.
But I have to say, and I even remember us making a parody of the theme song, Car 54, Where Are You? Is still a very funny show to me.
Now, I would say that has held up the least of any of them. You're talking about Car 54, Where Are You?
Yes.
We got to talk offline later.
Oh, that's fantastic. I don't mind you disagreeing. That's, Chet Kopic and Bruce Wolf, two other sportcasts, Henry. We'd have these private conversations over Twitter and Facebook messages and laugh our asses off about shows like that. So, yeah, we all miss Chet still, but Bruce is still around. And
you're not going to sing the Car 54 theme song, please, because I'll have to leave.
No, I wouldn't do that to you, Murphy.
You do know every word, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, me too. Enough said.
Prove it.
Well,
no, don't get us going, Henry.
I'll give the one line that doesn't hold up, and no one knows what it means in today's speak. But
Idlewild.
Yes, Khrushchev is. There's some.
Scout troops short a child. Khrushchev's due at Idlewild. Car 54, where are you?
And of course,
Idlewild is no longer Idlewild.
Right, Idlewild now JFK Airport, and Nikita Khrushchev, the Russian premier, which was of the moment when Car 54 was being made. Yeah, I don't know, Murph. I got to tell you, I love Al Lewis, Grandpa Munster, and I love Herman Munster, Fred Gwynn. Yeah. But I love those guys even more on Car 54, and especially Al Lewis. He was like this. I know Joey Ross was and he was the big deal, but Al Lewis, to me, man, that guy was the glue. He was so funny on that show.
Poor Henry's got to live. He's actually pretending like he's interested right now, John.
I know. I have no idea what these guys are talking about right now.
No. I'm an old.
Do you like any old reruns, Henry? Are you Green Acres? Anything?
These days, I'm trying to keep up with the new stuff.
I respect that.
When you live in Hollywood, there's so much that comes out that everyone's talking about.
No, I understand.
Currently, yeah,
absolutely. So. Murph, are you watching any of the new? Because as you say, you grew up as a Superman fan. Are you watching the new Superman TV show at all?
No, you know what, fellas? I never really got into much more of the action genre. I'm more of a Better Call Saul, and that's what I like to gravitate into. Ozark, that's sort of I like that style.
Attaboy. No, those are great. Hey, man, it's a new golden age of television. It really is in terms of, and it's something that I discuss a lot on Word Balloon here with my friends that are writers and producers of television. And how isn't it interesting that it was the ambition used to be graduating to features from television. And now television is eating, movies lunch in terms of having the bigger canvas to tell more intricate stories, get deeper into characterization, and telling 10-hour stories versus 2-hour stories. So it's really interesting how the pendulum swings like that. I don't know.
Have you had a chance to check out Goliath? Sort of under the radar, Goliath.
Is that the Amazon series?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. Yeah. That's Billy Bob, right?
Exactly, Billy Bob Thornton.
Yeah. No, great show, man. No, I'm with you. Absolutely. And I'm loving on Hulu right now, Only Murders in the Building with Steve Martin and Martin Short and Selena Gomez.
Let me get the yellow pad. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, Murph Will want to know when you mentioned Goliath if you were talking about the great claymation series Davy and Goliath.
No, I never understood without heavy drugs how anyone could watch claymation. And I believe I was about 10 the first time I saw it, so that wasn't happening.
Wow.
You're killing me, Murph. That's fantastic. Absolutely. You're not wrong, man. I know. At least NyQuil, if not heavy drugs. So I can appreciate that. Definitely, man. Oh, my God. Murph, I'm so sorry. I know you're Henry, I don't know if you know about this, but in baseball culture here in Chicago, the Cub fans, the bleachers was the place to be and still is.
Oh, wow.
And Murph is one of the original bleacher bums from the 60s. It was even the guy who would have a bugle playing charge.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
So Murph has a long association with the
no,
Cubs.
that was the 1967 when the Cubs and Leo DeRocher started winning for the first time in like 20 years.
Wow.
And in 1966, a big crowd at Wrigley Field would be about 500. And a year later, in 67, when they went into first place on July 2nd, they had 42,000 in the park and 10,000 more that couldn't get in.
Wow.
But my claim to fame is that basket. If you know Wrigley Field, sometimes the home run lands in the basket. Well, the basket was put there so that when I was 18 years old and the drinking age was 21, so I only had one beer per inning, Schlitz it was called. So we would walk the bleacher bombs. We would walk on the wall during the game from one 368 sign in left center to the 368 sign in right center. And I would do bugle calls on the bugle with 20 of my drunken buddies behind me. And they always were afraid that we'd fall onto the field, which would be about 11 feet.
Wow.
And then we would sue Mr. Wrigley and own the gum company, which would not have been optimal for the gum company if 20 out-of-work 18-year-old bums owned the gum company. So they put the basket. So if we did fall, we wouldn't be able to sue anybody.
That's hilarious.
Thanks for reminding me, John.
Oh, God, Murph, seriously, you're a Chicago legend for stuff like that. And Henry, all these, I mean, the Cubs never, won a pennant, unfortunately, but they really were under DeRocher a playoff, like would always be like in the running for the pennant. And all those great 60s and 70s players, they all knew Mike because of him being so devoted and being in the stands. And it was such a pleasure in the 90s working with Mike at the sports radio station where we'd have these great baseball veterans on. They all knew Mike.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's because they'd all come over to the bar across the street, raised bleacher bar in the shadow of the big scoreboard. Everyone knows the big old Wrigley Field center field. Right behind that was raised bleacher bar. And most of the players are like basically our age. They're like early 20s. So they just come over and we'd drink beer after the game. So we didn't ask for autographs or that. So it was very cool, and everyone knew each other, like John is saying. It was a different era. Can you imagine that all players coming across the street to the bar now and hanging out with the fans? That's not going to happen.
Yeah, truly, as Murph says, and I was a kid when all this stuff was happening, but working at the Score to become friends with Norm Van Leer, the great Chicago Bull, and our dear friend departed, also dead, unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, these guys really became good friends, and they were just part of the community. I mean, literally, you could see them riding on the subway or the L trains with you as you're going to work, they're going to work, and they were they had, as we said about Gilthorpe, off-season jobs and stuff.
Right. I like my high school coaches. They're driving the bus in the morning and after school at night.
100%. Absolutely, man. So, yeah. No, I had to I honestly, Murph, I miss you, and I had to give you your due on the air. Really, truly, one of the Henry, Mike is one of the great theaters of the mind when it comes to radio hosts. Was always prepared, even in the dog days, as we're in July right now in sports, where it really is, before training camp starts for football and it's mid-season after the All-Star. Or shame on me, did they already have the All-Star game, Murph?
No, it's coming up.
coming up. How about the one year when the baseball lockout for about 3 months in the middle, and basketball wasn't, the Bulls weren't started yet. The Bears were over. The Blackhawks it's winter. We had nothing for 3 months to talk about. That's when you had to really be creative to do 4 hours of radio, Henry, when there was nothing going on for 3 months.
That's when you talk to the local schools and stuff. So,
you got it. Exactly.
There you go. No, that's that.
Go ahead. Henry,
no. It's, as someone, Merv, I was on the radio for 2 years, and I was just born in the wrong era. I am probably as old as you guys in heart, because I just love this stuff, and cool. I wish I could I could do all the things I want to do, but thankfully comics is keeping me busy.
Attaboy. But no, Murph always had like literally, I don't know how many pages, Murph, of bits, go-to bits that would get the phones going and get the audience engaged. And
I'm sure Henry has the same thing in that, like, if we had a 4-hour show, I felt I had to prepare for an 8-hour show, because you never know what segments or bits, as we call them, are going to work, like John was saying. And I'm sure you've got, I don't know, the old days, sticky notes all over your house with different storylines that you probably hope you'll never even have to get to, but you've got to have backup just in case something's not working, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, there's a lot to do with Gil, and I'm hoping I can do 18 years and beat Neil's record, and hoping papers are still, around then. But
Henry, we're all excited, man. And again, it started today, everybody. So you can go to gocomics.com, and if you're watching live, or obviously if you're catching the audio of this, go to Go Comics. You can catch up on Henry's run on Gilthorpe that is just getting started, and he's got a year-long plan. And is it going to be published through Tribune, Henry, or is it with another publisher? Can you announce that?
Oh, with the trade paperback?
Yeah.
There are no plans for it to happen, but that's the goal. So
that's your
if the
ambition.
publisher is listening and wants to publish Gilthorpe, we can make a deal happen. But
that's great.
I do a lot of things through Kickstarter, so the Tribune's really keen on doing something. We just gotta figure out the best home for it. But it will be written as it's being constructed as a comic, week to week. So
understood. Hey man, we got Terry Beatty doing Rex Mason MD, and oh yeah, that's great, Murph. Honestly, like all the classics, they're still going. I've talked to Gary Gianni, a Chicago artist, was doing Prince Valiant up until a couple of years ago.
Oh wow!
So yeah, I mean, I love, and Jim O'Keefe was doing Flash Gordon. Beautiful stuff. I wish you guys could see my walls, because I've got a great Jim O'Keefe, Buster Crabbe, and I forget the woman that played Dale Arden back in the old Buster Crabbe serials. But it's beautiful. And it's so Buster Crabbe is Flash. Beautiful pencil sketch that he did for me. I'm lucky.
That's cool.
But I'm glad you're carrying on the tradition, Henry. Also, we look forward to in early August, Batman Urban Legends with your story of Batman and Erdogan, the demon. That's going to be great. Yeah. And I hope that means more stuff. And Henry, remind me your I would refer to it as Sword and Sandal action.
Oh yeah, Helm Grey Castle. Yeah, that came out last year. The premise is, what if Lord of the Rings had a South Side?
Outstanding, man. Very cool. Well, Henry, good luck. Continued success. I'm so glad you got this gig, and I'm very excited for you. And please, when the series gets a little more controversial, we'll
get the first interview. Hopefully, Tucker Carlson gets first interview, then he could get second. I don't know, whoever.
No, I never need to be first, Henry. I'll make sure I'll wear my bow tie to give the pundit impression. Who do you think you are, Henry Barajas, to give that kind of controversy to a classic, safe comic strip? How dare you?
Oh, it's not safe with me involved. It's in danger.
That's great, man. Well, terrific. And Murph, great seeing you, man.
Nice to
I
meet you.
Nice to meet Henry. Great to see you, John. And I'm going to be looking for a reference to Zippy, in one of the storylines down the road. And,
it won't be for another month.
GoComics.com, everybody.
Yeah.
There you go. You still have the reflexes. They're very good, Murph. There you go. You still got the reflexes. You know what to do, man.
All right,
everybody,
guys.
Thanks a lot for watching. It's going to be a fun week. Hey, tonight I'm talking about some of those great streaming shows. I don't think Murph is watching them. Maybe Henry is. But we're going to talk about the wrap-up of Star Trek Strange New Worlds and the wrap-up of The Boys, and also discuss the Orville, which I think is still killing it every week. So we'll be doing that tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. So I hope you'll join me in just 6 hours for that.